character.
Yeah, so before we start, you asked us to mention who you are going to be and who we are playing the roles. So we are Aspire Consulting, a group that has been employed by the management and board of directors to fix the particular challenges that Tesla is facing. And the judges on this panel today are the board of directors of Tesla. Okay,
Perfect.
and I'll share my screen now.
It was 1986, and the clock struck 11:38. 73 seconds after liftoff, the Challenger shuttle burst into flame, killing 7 of America's elite astronauts. It left a permanent scar on the last innovation race of century. The whole disaster could have been avoided if the management listened to the engineering's warning, but they did not. It's true that there's no innovation without failure, period. But when the prize is human life, failure like that, it's not an option, especially when there are preventive measurements that we can take. Good afternoon, my name is James Pham, and I'm here with my colleagues from Aspire Consulting, Dolly, Laura, Michael, and Sham. And as Tesla is accelerating in the new technology race of this era, we are here today to present a proposal that would help your company consider the full price of innovation and avoid autopiloting into new disaster. But first, we need to realize the ethical dilemma that Tesla is in. The paradox is Tesla Autopilot could save the lives of millions, but it will kill some people first. On one lane, Tesla has the opportunity to save millions. Every year in the US, there are more than 2 million car accident injuries. And among those, 94% of those accident injuries were due to human errors. 1 out of 3 fatalities were related to speeding. By removing human errors out of the equation, Tesla Autopilot could eliminate speeding and impaired and distracted driving. However, on the opposite lane, there has been casualties regarding autopilot. From 2015 to 2018, when the feature is announced, there were 4 reported deaths. In 2019 alone, there were 5 more. And as we are entering May 2021, there were 6 additional casualties since last year. But this is not just a set of facts. These were real people. Walter Huang, Toshiro Umeda, Joshua Brown, Gao Yanning, Jeremy Barron Banner, Yoon Hong-gyun, and 9 more whose names have not been announced. The accident did not just take away their lives. The permanent scars that they left on the victims' families are also immeasurable. One can argue that this is the cost of being a market leader. When compared to its competitors, Tesla total autopilot-related deaths are significantly higher than its competitors. A quick skim through the autonomous vehicles market would give anyone an idea of how many players are there. And in such competitive market, will force companies to find and prioritize shortcuts, which potentially leads to accidents. And the public are paying closely attention to these crashes. These are just a few examples of public reactions. On the surface, this might seem like only a job for public relations, but we argue that Tesla issue goes deeper than just a matter of steering public opinions. The issue lies in Tesla cultures. The company is prioritizing disruption and innovations over sound business practices. Such trade-off is steering the companies in the wrong directions. Walter Huang was Tesla's most loyal customers, the early adopters, the advocates who put his life behind the steering wheels and let autopilot lead the way. But despite all of that, Tesla Respawn did not take into any liability on their own. And the reason behind this is Tesla response was legalistic. It obeys the law with no further social actions. The company obeys the laws, but in the race to lead the autonomous vehicle race, Tesla needs to go beyond that. The key problem we have identified is Tesla innovation-centric culture. It's compromising your business practices. Our overall recommendation as we go through today for Tesla is to drive transformational change to become the ethical industry leaders. We'll do so by accelerating cultural change, shielding users from accidents, and leading ethical industry change.
We'll take a look at the legal dimension of this dilemma. When we compare federal regulatory authorities in the US, we notice that they drive safety regulations across industries. They define the standards and regulations for operators within the domain. However, for autonomous vehicles, the NHTSA leaves active regulation to the states. It only provides guidance for states and publishes a document on vision for safety of autonomous vehicles. Moreover, 28 states have introduced differing legislation, which increases the complexity for consumers and manufacturers of autonomous vehicles. With such varying standards and regulations in US, Tesla can look at well-defined progressive international laws. The government in Germany has recently drafted a bill for a motion that comprehensively covers regulation of autonomous vehicles. It covers vehicles with high autonomy levels and, of note, scenarios such as conditions for autonomous driving function, accident prevention, and manufacturer's obligation. Tracking legislation in Germany is important as it would pave the way for legislation in Europe. Although Tesla's actions are unethical, no laws have been broken. However, the company should be aware of tort law and product liability from manufacturing negligence. Tort law and product liability have impacted two car manufacturers in the past.
Engineers at Ford designed the Pinto under pressure from top management to deliver a car below $2,000. Because of design flaws and corner cutting, the car caught fire when impacted from behind. In the 1970s, Ford paid damages of $7 million to a Pinto burn survivor. Adjusted for inflation in 2021 dollars, the Ford payment grows from $7 million to $28 million. Further adjusting for the difference between a burn victim and a fatality adds another 50% to this payment. We estimate that a potential fine for a Tesla autopilot related death could be around $42 million. The chances of these types of lawsuits increase when Tesla's autopilot and manufacturing negligence are found at fault. However, disclaimers around proper product use can offset the chances of liabilities when the product is used incorrectly.
Next, we will look at the financial and business dimensions of Tesla. Tesla's current organizational values include the statements like move fast and do the impossible, which prioritize innovation and technology development. This prioritization comes at the expense of consumer protection efforts and employee welfare. Tesla's impaired business practices can be seen in the production of their Model 3 electric sedans. You produced a record number of vehicles in the second quarter of 2019, and 20% of them were made in the GF4 facility pictured on the slide. The tent that your employees were working in did not protect them from the harsh weather conditions like heat and rain. Another impaired business practice involves employees taking shortcuts such as substandard material and rushed work practices to meet aggressive deadlines. Finally, in order to increase the production of Model 3 vehicles, Tesla skipped an important testing step. This testing step involves using water to test pressure and help to determine if there are any leaks. All of these impaired business practices are due to the pressure to move quickly to market.
Business factors like brand image, a desire to innovate, and top management goals have had a negative impact on Tesla's culture. The result? Employee mistreatment. For example, some employees are forced to work extreme amounts of overtime to meet production goals or company policy. There are 9 key aspects of culture. Employees love working at Tesla as the company is an innovator and moves quickly. However, the other 7 aspects, most notably respect, are ranked very poorly by employees. Recent scandals have rocked the consumer goods and services industry, especially the transportation industry. Boeing will pay upwards of $2.5 billion for their misconduct with respect to the 737 MAX airplane. This case provides a recent example of an unethical decision-making that led to the loss of life. Volkswagen's unethical approach to emissions testing cost the company $9.5 billion in fines. Additionally, Volkswagen lost an unknown but probably meaningful amount of sales due to declining consumer perception. Tesla's exponential growth rate leads to an increasing liability stream. Using the since inception growth rate as a low estimate and the last 7-year growth rate as a high estimate, we predict Tesla's fleet will reach between 8.2 million and 13.7 million cars by 2025. Assuming that each autopilot-related death incurs a fine of 42 million and the historical death rate of autopilot users is constant, Tesla's potential liability could range from $873 million to $1.45 billion. However, fines are only the beginning of the financial hardship that comes with a legal scandal. The best way to demonstrate the impact of legal issues and consumer sentiment on financial performance is the example of Chipotle Mexican Grill. Chipotle had a run of E. coli infections starting in 2015, indicated on the left graph by the red star. The company's share price traded down to 3-year lows and took 7 years to recover to previous highs. The graph on the right shows the quarter-over-quarter sales growth. The period that corresponds to the E. coli scandal is highlighted in red.
Finally, let's look at the ethical dimension of the challenge. Current culture at Tesla creates an environment for pressured innovation and low employee morale, which leads to product development under tight deadlines and increased employee stress causes them to use unethical business practices. Therefore, the end product misses details for end user, which jeopardizes their safety. Misrepresentation exists in Tesla's advertising as the company markets its products as autopilot and self-driving. On the slide, you can see examples of how this misrepresentation is advertised. The use of words like full and the images of hand-free steering perpetuates the misconception as it gives consumer a false sense of reality. This misrepresentation in advertising impacts consumer understanding of the product as they're unaware of the different level of autonomous driving. Consumers do not understand that Tesla vehicles are only at a level 2 and thus not fully autonomous. This is so dangerous that even German transport regulators sent a letter to Tesla asking them to change their advertising.
In the worst case scenario, this marketing misrepresentation leads to fatalities of how to use this technology. It's only the tip of the iceberg of the issues perpetuated within the company. We have excessive demand, which leads to aggressive production goals and thus employee burnout. And overall, this is all unethical business practices who fatally affect the supporters of Tesla, who are their customers. And out of the 8 basic consumer rights in the United States, there are 3 we'd like to highlight. So their misleading advertising violates the right of the consumer to be informed, and this misuse is diminishing the consumer safety with the product. And that lack of consumer education on how to use this technology in the car causes harm to them at the end. So this will continue to perpetuate unless direct internal action is taken. And the lack of consideration for consumers and their rights is a result of the culture that employees are engaging in, the environment they're in, and are subjected to.
Moving on to our recommendation. We have 3 components of the recommendation. Accelerate cultural change, shield users from accidents, and lead ethical industry change. Accelerating cultural change requires leadership to set the tone. Value realignment should begin with internally developed statement that is delivered by top management. Prevention of accidents can be accomplished by creating a new legal framework under which the company will now operate. Lastly, instead of independently developing products, work with regulators to develop autonomous vehicle laws and standards that benefit Tesla, the consumer, and the general public. Our plan begins with management defining the new cultural standards at Tesla, is bridged with internal initiatives and external partnerships, and ends with a reduced likelihood of lawsuits. The market currently views Tesla as an innovative EV manufacturer. Our plan takes Tesla to new heights as the company that defined EV ethical principles and led the way to a new era of transportation.
We'll move on to the implementation now. For any desired cultural change, it is crucial that leaders set the tone for where they want the company's culture to be in the future. The first step is to expand the current code of conduct and ethics, which only contains information on conduct, insider trading, confidentiality, harassment, and code of conduct for CEO and senior financial officers. By including responsibilities to consumers, Tesla can shift employees and management's thoughts and actions in the workplace. An ethics committee and internal legal framework will mitigate future liabilities. And finally, allocating employee workload strategically will ensure operational goals and deadlines are met. Your company values innovation above all else, and this has been the driving force for success. Now it is time for values to evolve to allow internal stakeholders to use consumer-centric decision making. Move fast to identify future ethical issues. Consider the impact of innovation on society. Think like consumers to responsibly innovate. And finally, reflect how the innovation has impacted customers. We propose 4 key steps and tools that will commit to a change in the culture of this magnitude. The new values will be communicated through semi-annual town meetings held on-site and virtually. Employees and middle management will need to be educated about best practices in ethics through semi-annual workshops and through the initiatives of the ethics committee. The company needs to recognize employees who sustain the new values and identify ethical champions and influencers who can support this movement. Finally, revising performance management systems will reinforce the commitment to values, incentivizing ethics as much as innovation. Our analysis of the legislation on regulating autonomous vehicles that Germany plans to bring motivated us to adopt crucial elements of the proposed bill. Accident prevention systems, independent delivery of data, and secure connectivity ensure drivers and passengers' safety throughout their journeys. Specifically, accident prevention systems should be constructed to prioritize human life above all else, and abstract general rule will govern software programming parameters. It is expected that manufacturers will soon have to implement technologies that are secured against external attacks, provide reliable connectivity for data exchange, and notify authorities about any manipulation of vehicle technologies. As autonomous cars add more technologies, manufacturers will be required to offer training to consumers in the near future. As per SAE automation levels, Tesla Autopilot is at level 2, and there is a long road ahead to achieve level 5 or full autonomy. Until such time, eliminating any message that mentions self-driving, autopilot, and visuals of hands-off driving will ensure consumers do not have any misconceptions. In fact, salespeople at Tesla showrooms should clarify different autonomous levels of driving to prospective and existing customers. These endeavors will align the company's and brand ambassadors' messaging. Just as your company established patents openly, publishing the new internal ethical standards and practicing clear communication of autonomous driving will see your company defining industry principles. The autonomous driving industry is currently like the Wild West, and working alongside with government agencies to support in new legislation will set new standards. We envision that drivers will be required to be licensed for autonomous vehicles along with current driving licenses, and it would benefit Tesla to support transport regulation authorities. How much does our recommendation cost? Internal communications and legal costs are budgeted for $3 million, but ideally these resources are already available for your company to mobilize. Revisions to our marketing outreach and ethical workshops with external ethics experts will cost approximately $52 million, and recognition and rewards for ethical champions would cost $18 million over the 3 years of implementation. Our KPIs are 100% for customer awareness about the capabilities of Tesla's assisted driving features. We aim to reduce employee turnover from the current 44% to 15% and achieve 90% positive brand image with potential consumers and public. Our recommendation is not without risks. We identified that the company may face external pressure due to competition to take shortcuts, but sticking to our recommendation will allow your company to differentiate itself from your competitors. Proper identification and support of ethical champions will allow them to participate in every step, including the innovation process of your company.
Our recommendation of driving transformative change has numerous impacts. So first to start, changing the culture will significantly impact Tesla. It will allow for better product development through clear communication, and as a result, there will be less accidents, less likelihood of lawsuits, and financial settlements for the organization will be prepared for future legislative changes. Clearly defining the autonomous features, as shared by my colleague Shayon, will increase consumer understanding of the product. Training sales employees and updating marketing materials will demonstrate Tesla's commitment to this education. And this step will eliminate the misconceptions of Tesla's AV vehicles and is fundamental to seeing a reduction in accidents and industry. This will also position Tesla as should progressive legislation be introduced, similar to the German legislation discussed. This also shows commitment to several rights for the consumer. Let's just go to the next slide. Our approach to mitigating the liabilities from the ethical and legal breaches is through financial means such as the capital issuance or insurance. We believe that the best way to mitigate Tesla's potential liabilities is to focus on the ethical decision-making at the company. So this proactive approach is better as it doesn't require the use of Tesla's growth capital. It allows for consumer protection, and it also enhances that brand image. So we believe that the most sustainable, so we can improve Tesla's ethical position from one that's legalistic, that obeys the law and doesn't take any further social action, to one that becomes fully ethical with that full integration of ethics into the core business practices.
In conclusion, Tesla innovation-centric culture is compromising your business practices. We recommend that Tesla drive transformational change to become the ethical industry leaders. The recommendation is built upon the pillars of 1, accelerating cultural change, which involves leadership, realigning values, and strong commitment to change. 2, shielding users from potential accidents through a legal framework and education. And 3, leading ethical change industry-wide. It is 2021 and Tesla is in the new race towards self-driving technology. As a market leader, it is critical for Tesla to consider that the full price of innovation is more than just how many miles autopilot can cover, or even how fast the technology can be updated. Tesla must consider broader implications as it seeks to push the limits. We hope our proposal has shed light on the price of innovation and are confident that our recommendation will provide a more sustainable solution for the organization and a safer product for our consumers. Thank you for listening, and we are happy to answer any question.
Thank you very, very much for all of that. Yeah, we have set aside up to 20 minutes for questions, and so let me invite either of my colleagues to start.
I'll go ahead. I have a question. On the slide that showed the deaths compared to Jaguar and I think Chevy Volt, and I forget, there might have been a third brand. How meaningful is that? Because shouldn't it be somehow normalized to the number of vehicles on the road? Weren't there far many more Tesla vehicles on the road using this sort of automation? And I'm just wondering what those statistics would look like, because I know we're going to get pushback from the chairman on this.
Yeah, absolutely. So when comparing Tesla autopilot related deaths to its competitors, it is critical to see that in the same price range that a Model 3 comparing to Chevrolet Bolt and the I-Pace of Jaguar, Tesla autopilot, which is the safest, arguably the safest feature of Tesla, it's causing more deaths than those that does not even have that technology.
Okay.
One thing I can add, one thing I can add is that because we considered electrical vehicles as a separate industry, because the consumer behavior and decision process is different, we used these comparable car models to work with to compare with Tesla.
Let me jump in, and whoever is controlling the screen, feel free to go ahead and take the presentation down so that we can see your faces. Okay, perfect. Excellent first question, Greg. Do you want to continue with more, or Peter? We can go back and forth.
I was curious, yeah, and I'm happy to jump in. I was curious about some of the data, a couple of the data points that were used. One was around, let me just check my notes here, specifically the how employees are talking about their culture and how that was ranked. Where did that data come from?
There's a company called Culture 500. They talk to more than 2,000 employees of the Tesla. How, when they talk about the company's culture, which values they particularly discuss, and how they feel about it. Do they have a positive sentiment with it or the negative? And then there's 12 big industries in the mobility industry. And we compare the numbers of the Tesla with all those industries to see where Tesla stands overall.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
I have another question, if I may. When you talk about changing the aspect of culture of employees working too many hours, allegedly, but doesn't Tesla attract those kind of people that are very intense? I mean, from the top of the company, obviously, Elon Musk is a very intense individual. And what's going to be the cost, both in sort of the talent we're going to be able to attract, and also, if we're going to have reduced hours, then of course we're going to have to hire more people. What is the cost trade-off for that?
So I think trade-off is a really good word to use. So currently Tesla has a 45% employee turnover, which is actually a very, very costly number. So it costs thousands of dollars to hire, let's say, a mid-level employee. However, when you're talking about highly sophisticated engineers that are working on autopilot features and self-driving, those hirings are very, very costly. I would say upwards of 100,000, as you often have to pay recruiters who are paid as a proportion of their salary, their base starting salary. In terms of answering the question about more employees, we believe that employing more people will actually be cheaper than consistently hiring new people and going through the training process and going through the onboarding of new employees. So we think there is a cost in that more employees is more dollars, but it's offset against the cost of the high turnover rate.
Thank you. That's a really good point about the cost of turnover. I think a lot of executives forget about that.
Yeah, yeah, we could all jump in with questions, but I appreciate everything you've shared. It makes me feel like none of the 5 of you have ever once in your life driven a Tesla. I've driven one every day since July 28th of 2019. And I wonder if you would feel differently if you had the chance to do it even one day. So your presentation is sobering. My first question was actually just captured by Greg very well, which is we know we're bold. We're proud that we're bold. There's no perfect thing out there or perfect approach. And you could have made a 25-minute presentation on all of the great things about Tesla, and it would have been an outcome of our existing culture. So I see your point about trade-offs, and maybe we don't have all of our priorities right, but I am anxious about what it would take to temper this amazing culture that has gotten us to where we are. My question is maybe an expansion of what Greg just, the point he made. Have you really thought through the potential downsides associated with tampering with our culture? We're not perfect. 45% turnover is a lot and expensive, but we're facing a world where everyone was confident we weren't going to succeed. And now our chairman is the second wealthiest person in the world, soon to be the first. We are winning and we're succeeding, and it's a little hard to hear you tell us that we're not doing our jobs well.
By no means do we need to come off as saying that you're not doing your jobs well, but if maybe we just recall, Volkswagen was the largest car manufacturer in the world at one point in time, and since their emissions scandal, they have been replaced. This solution that we're bringing forward is not really to tear down Tesla's existing culture. It's really to build it up and complement it with an ethical framework and ethical decision-making that will allow Tesla not only to be the innovation leader, but to be perceived as someone who cares about their customer and is certain about the impact that they want their business to have on the general population.
Yeah, just to add to that as well, we realized and identified a risk of potentially slowing down the innovation process. But in our plan, what we have actually also considered is that we will identify ethical champions, so people who are working across functions, and they will champion this cause in the daily activity and decision-making process. So that also helps to speed up the innovation rather than holding it back. So your culture is actually expanding and not shrinking going forward.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, you took a bold suggestion about leveraging our leadership toward developing principles that would serve as standards for the industry as a whole. Two problems with that I want your reaction to. Number one, we brought Greg in as a lawyer. There are antitrust implications associated with us partnering with our competitors to develop common standards that in the past has been twisted to prevent and create barriers of entry. So there are antitrust implications. And secondly, our competitors hate us. And the fun part is we hate our competitors. And that hatred for our competitors has led to our success. And I have more faith in the people at Tesla to just establish the standards and let the marketplace, as it has been doing for a couple of years now, agree with us. I fear that if we get together with our competitors to talk about industry standards, that will be diluting the magic that is Tesla.
Yeah, that's a really good observation, Tim. But what I would say is that Tesla is not driven by the hatred or the competition. It's actually driven by the forward vision of sustainable transportation and energy. And so in that aspect, when we covered our plan, we talked more about partnering with government agencies, for the interests of that. And of course, as our internal culture evolves, we feel that people will gain a better image of us, including our competitors, and really see that we want to be a champion of this cause rather than, separating up companies and the competitors.
I think the goal of partnering with these government agencies is really to bring them up to speed. We know that Tesla innovates at an extreme pace, whereas the regulators are often swamped with bureaucracy and time delays and other priorities. So we think a partnership between industry and government will help benefit the entire community.
Okay, thank you. Peter or Greg?
So I have a question about the recommendation that you made with regards to changing some of some certain nomenclature, and I do recognize. I think you made an excellent point in recognizing that what we're saying in terms of this idea of autopilot and self-driving may send may be sending the wrong message, and with some of the while we say things are self-driving or autopilot, we're showing pictures of people with their hands off the wheel, and that I think to your credit, I think you've identified something that's an excellent opportunity for us to improve. What recommendations, considering you're saying, well, don't use this language, you have to understand that this is also a big selling point for the innovation of the vehicles that we're creating. So if we're not going to use that language to help market these vehicles, what language do you suggest that we use that still speaks to that level of innovation?
So as a part of our branding exercise, thank you, Peter, for that question. We did think about using a terminology like co-pilot, or assisted driving. The importance is that when you look at, for example, the airplane industry, autopilot is exclusively used by licensed certified pilots, whereas in this case, it's normal people and general public who purchase these products. So it's important to distinguish that word. So we came up with co-pilot, assisted driving, and focus more about the autonomy levels that the ACE provides.
It's an interesting idea, Shyam, that you just mentioned regarding licensing of certified pilots and what that would, what kind of impact that could potentially have on autonomous vehicles in general, and what role that may play in this conversation overall. I'm glad you brought that up.
Anything more, Greg or Peter?
I don't have any more questions.
So in terms of the organization and who is going to lead this effort? Who's supposed to be responsible for leading this effort within Tesla to make that happen? To make your recommendations happen. So I know that. So some of it was internal communication. In terms of you outlined certain costs for marketing and workshops and rewards and recognition. So what do you propose from an organization standpoint to help address this?
Yeah, ideally it would be the management that sets the tone, as we mentioned, and that's because they can drive their functions towards this new value alignment. The reason why we brought it up to the board of directors is because we want everyone in Tesla to be part of this process. And it's important that right from the top, the leadership sets the tone, and then it trickles down to management and the employees. That also shows the seriousness of the change that we want to implement.
Great, thank you.
Okay, well, we've only used 15 of the 20 minutes, but if Greg and Peter have nothing further, I think we can conclude. So thank you. Congratulations, team. It's hard to walk into Tesla and say the things that you said. So I'm impressed with your previous 40 minutes. Okay, well, great. So let me invite Greg or Peter to get us started. We're now out of character, and so let me invite you to give some feedback to the team members.
Sure. Well, I'm happy to go first. Great job, team. I will say that being fairly new to these case presentations, it's great to see how different teams are tackling these issues, and I thought you did really, really well across a lot of areas. I thought you did an excellent job tying in with the mission and values of the organization, and that came up a couple of times during your presentation, which I think is wonderful and really helps to set the tone. And I think especially presenting to someone like a board to help them make those connections all the way through. I thought you did a great job with the cost implications and the financial information that you presented. You really spelled it out. I really love that you broke it down in terms of what this is going to cost Tesla to do. That you had a timeline. That you really spoke, I think, in a very kind of holistic way with regards to the implementation. I loved the fact that you also captured in your recommendations employee recognition as a way to help address some really building that cultural element within the organization. The fact that you included an appendix and the references, I think, was really, really good. So much again, and just tons of great slides, like the fact that you talked about key performance indicators. I mean, you really got into it was high level enough, but you provided enough very tangible elements that I think an organization could connect with and see, okay, we do this, we're going to measure this, and this is how we'll get to the value. Some to build on that. So some of the things I'd say overall, it seemed like the pacing was good. I think you did you covered a lot of terrain. You shared the speaking well across the entire team. I would say, given the nature of the topic, I think as we got to the end, when we got to the discussion, I got much more of a feeling about the potential options for creating a win-win, really, by doing this. And it didn't necessarily, I would say, for me, it didn't come across that way when the initial part of the presentation. It felt a little bit, to me, a little bit heavy in that regard. And so I think, emphasizing that, you're emphasizing this, really the ways that I think you spoke to towards the end about how this is really ultimately just going to be a benefit, and focusing on those benefits could be a tweak that you would make to the presentation. Some of the data, again, I was just trying to jot as many notes as I could. The fact that you listed KPIs, I think, was excellent. Looking at some of those KPIs, were they realistic? Expecting 100% customer awareness of anything, I don't know that that's necessarily realistic. So thinking about, if you had, and you may not have had access to that data, but being able to tie into sort of realistic, measurable changes from what the current environment is at Tesla, I think could help make that case even better. So I thought you did like I said, I thought you did a great job overall. Very nice work, and gave me lots to think about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll go next if that's okay.
Go for it, Greg.
Yeah, I agree with Peter. I mean, I thought the mechanics of the presentation and the slides were excellent. I think if there's anything that you might have done differently, again, I think the statistics, I mean, I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing the statistics might have been a little misleading on that slide that showed the number of individuals that had fatalities, because I think if you look at how many Teslas are on the road today compared to whatever that earliest statistic was, I mean, I think it shows a downward trend of fatalities per miles driven or whatever the right measure is. I think in the real world, you might have gotten a lot of pushback on some of those statistics. And then the other thing I think might have been great to do would have been to show us a little more of how you came to the recommendation. Like maybe there's some other options you could present and say, we looked at this potential solution, we looked at another potential solution, and then the one that we really arrived at was here, and here's why. Just to understand your thought process, that might have been a stronger way to present the solution. But again, overall, I thought you all did a great job.
Greg, just on the statistics, so we did an exercise, the NHTSA posts accident rates and it's combined highway and combined city, the rate that they post. And what Tesla does is they mark their performance against the NHTSA, and they disclose this in their financials every quarter. But what they don't footnote is that autopilot is only a highway feature. It's not designed for city driving. So basically they're comparing apples to oranges. So once you normalize the accident rate for the highway versus city breakdown, it's almost indifferent between human and autopilot in terms of the error rate. We didn't want to present that because it was a little bit complex, but just for your information.
Right, thanks.
Yeah, it's actually excellent, Michael, that you know that, and I know if it would have been the right thing to do during the Q&A, you would have brought it up. So, yeah, it's the fact that you know that is, as Peter and Greg have said, you guys are a great team and you did a great job. By the way, no one refers to it as the NHTSA. We call it NHTSA. So everyone in our field calls it NHTSA. So yeah, I agree that this was impressive. This is tough. Again, there's a little part of me in my questions. Well, first of all, is I have been driving a Model 3 every day since July 28, 2019, over 60,000 miles, and I still wake up trying to figure out a reason to go out and drive because it's so much of a joy. But of course, you've all made me feel guilty of it now. But that'll pass. That will pass. I really agree with what Greg said, both of his main points. Because one of my biggest suggestions to you is, yeah, the design of this competition invites you to set it up the way that you did. You guys tackled a very serious thing, and you went right to the board of Tesla. So that was good, and that's the right thing. But come on, you are in our house criticizing us, and so it's okay. We're big boys. We're very wealthy because of how successful the company is. So it's okay and the way one of you responded to my question was very good. We're not saying that you guys are doing what you're doing badly. We're simply suggesting that you can leverage the great stuff you've done to be even better. So whoever, I forget if it was Shyam or Michael, whatever, is a great answer. I've been working in business ethics for 34 years, and I have literally made presentations exactly like the ones that you have done. And to be perfectly honest with you, it is such a rare luxury and a privilege to get an hour's worth of time from these very powerful people. And if you do and say what you want to communicate well, you could change the world. When you're in their house, find a way to be more respectful. I'm not saying you were disrespectful, but find a way to kiss their butts a little bit more. because it's tempting, especially at Tesla. Some of the people in that boardroom were so egotistical and narcissistic. You gotta think about how you can make them not act defensively. I want them to actually hear what you have to say. So, it's okay for you to say at the beginning of the presentation, Lace, that, congratulations to you, board of directors. You have accomplished things that so many people said was not going to happen, but you did it. So that's fantastic. And we consider it an honor to be in here to share with you insights on how to take this great thing you've done and make it even better. So that sort of butt kissing can really make a difference and can work. As someone like myself who has every now and then gotten the chance to be in the room to do that. So I'm not as well organized as Peter and Greg, but I'll go through some of the things. I thought James's beginning with the Challenger was excellent. What a nice way to start this off instead of it being completely technical. So that worked out well. And the focus on saving dollars and harm to persons and things like that just gets right to the core of it. Stating the problem at the beginning and stating your direction, it's exactly what Tom White suggests for a good reason. This information is so much and it's so quick and everything. We need you to hold our hand through it. And so it's awesome you did his rule of 3. Say at the beginning what you're going to say, then say it, and then at the end tell them what was said. So that was very good. I think Cheyenne made reference to a slide, might have been Michael, and you said going from 21 to 42 was 50% greater. It's 100% greater. So it's weird how little things like that can be captured by small minds like mine. Yeah, just like I think Peter said, I love Dolly's reference to the organizational values. It takes this and makes it really custom. Boards of directors like ours, we spend days really thinking about choosing those values. So for the fact that if you're going to come and talk to us about ethics, the fact that Dolly brought that up, it would have been a huge gap if it wasn't there. So that was great. Loved the references to VW and Boeing, made this very realistic and practical. Also the Chipotle thing, so that was very well done. One thing, Laura, you would use the word they. You should have said you. So you would say they for the leadership of Tesla, and you were looking right into the face of the leadership of Tesla. So we are a you, not a they. I think your slides were really good. Sometimes we see slides that are, this is for all of you, for the whole presentation. Sometimes we see slides which are overpacked with information. You guys had a lot of slides, and not in a bad way and everything. I wanted very much to read them, to look at the information, but they were high contrast, which is great. They were straightforward. They weren't littered with unnecessary information. So that makes a big difference. I'm also a big fan of timelines, as was brought up by Peter. The Shyam's reference to the code of conduct, for the same reason that Dolly brought up the values, was fantastic. It was good. Laura had a little hiccup there with something, and it's great that you didn't dwell on it. You just professionally did whatever you needed to do for 5 or 10 seconds, and then you moved on. So if that ever happens to you in real life, handle it exactly the way that you did, because that was good. It's distracting when someone spends the next 30 seconds apologizing. Yeah, similarly, like Peter, loved the specifics on cost. And the reference to risks and mitigation. I hope I'm not revealing too much, but of 3 presentations today, you are the first one that referred to risks and mitigation. And like I said, I'm in an ethics department in a corporation, and we have never made a presentation without talking about risks and mitigation. So that was very realistic, along with the reference to KPIs, like Peter said. So anyway, and finally, the appendix. I challenged a group earlier today who should have had an appendix and they didn't, and then you guys did it. So I I wonder if you were secretly listening in on that. I don't know about the ethics of that. I loved that you were able to quickly refer in answering Peter's question about data points. I don't know if it was Dolly or who brought up Culture 500 immediately. So it just shows how well prepared you are. I was disappointed not to see Laura as answering any of the questions, but you guys might have thought we would have used the full 20 minutes, and so I'm not going to freak out about that. Overall, just really reveals that you did a lot of hard work, and nice job. Do you have any reactions, any of the 5 of you, about the experience, or any reactions to our feedback?
No, thank you for that. It was great to hear that feedback. We did realize the challenge of presenting to the board of directors because the CEO is also part of that. We try to be as you say diplomatic with the choice of words and the way we presented it. When we said brand ambassador's message, it was actually Elon Musk right off. He is the brand ambassador of Tesla. So we struggled with that quite a bit. We tried to soften the blow. I really appreciate that you said, Tim, that we needed to, kiss the butt a bit and start with something probably more, something more positive for Tesla. But we wanted to bring the seriousness of that issue. So that's the dilemma which we faced in balancing this, ethical challenge. Yeah.
No, and it's a very difficult dilemma. So you should be proud of how you handled it. Forgive me, I had one more criticism just in case we're lucky enough to see some or all of you next year. You get your target is 25 minutes. You get up to 30. So whether you do 25 minutes or 29 and a half, it's the same. If you go over 30, very bad. You guys came in at 19. So 19 is a good way not to go over 30, but 19 might be 10 minutes of discussion, content. I really loved what Greg said about if you had helped us know how you came to your recommendation and this and that, like things that you thought about but then didn't go with and stuff like that. That would have made a great thing even better, and you had the time to do it. So it's really hard to do this, but again, as someone who has been in Fortune 500 boardrooms, if they invite you in for up to 30 minutes, don't stop at 19. So I know it's hard because this is just a student thing and kind of external to your studies, but just in the future, kind of have a plan A or a plan B so that if someone's tracking the time and like the last person realizes that we're ahead of time because maybe we spoke too fast or someone forgot some content or something, that last person should be prepared for another 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 minutes, not to just shove it in there to just get the minutes, only if adding that stuff really could be of value. But you only use it if you have the time to do it.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts from team members or judges?
Well, I just had one thought that you remind me of something I meant to mention that I forgot in my feedback, which was, and this is kind of a question for you, Tim, as well. In my experience, I think in a lot of high-level decision-making things, you like to see benchmarking, and by that I mean what's the competition doing in these areas of ethics and culture and so forth. It might have been nice to have some benchmarking data, maybe comparing the turnover of Tesla to the turnover of General Motors. Maybe that's not apples to apples, but something like that. And I forgot to mention that, and it sort of ties in with the path, telling us more about how you came to the conclusion, because I think benchmarking might be a good way to convince the board that what you're recommending is really the right way to go.
Yeah, Greg makes a great point because Tesla is very proud of the fact that it is seen by a lot of people as winning the game. You wouldn't have said that even a year ago, let alone 2 to 3 years ago, and so it's one of those weird things where they now feel they're so much better than other car companies that are making similar electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles. By the way, I don't ever use the autonomous feature that I paid an extra $5,000 for, because it scares the heck out of me when when I bought it in 2018, there were some imperfections that led to the car deciding when I'm going 70 miles an hour on the freeway to just slam on its brakes by itself. And if there would have been somebody behind me, it would have caused an accident. And so I haven't turned it on since the first 3 months. And I was very unhappy with the extent to which they misrepresented how much of the autonomous came with the car that I paid for, and things like that. So a good point about the misrepresentation. But Greg's point right now really does settle in, because Elon Musk's arrogance, which is available to all of us through this wonderful thing called Twitter, he does want to be compared. You know, if you think of other companies out there, one example is Costco. You know, Elon Musk admires the recently retired CEO of Costco, Jim something or other, for employee satisfaction and reduced turnover and things like that. And so the board of directors at Tesla wouldn't give a damn about any benchmarking with other auto companies, because they think they're the best. But they would respond, as Greg just suggested, to benchmarking against other more established companies that are really successful, kind of like Southwest Airlines and its employee satisfaction and customer satisfaction. So great suggestion by Greg.
I wanted to add on a couple things that I think Tim had just mentioned, sort of related to this. You know, what does Tesla? People identify Tesla with I mean, sort of the consumers identify Tesla with automobiles, but if you look at Tesla and the direction that they're going, you know, they're kind of an energy company. They're actually more of a focus on, I mean, it's vehicles, but they're really focused on energy. I mean, they're, you know, what they're doing with regards to creating infrastructure to support the use of solar energy to power infrastructure. And so I think that's actually it would have been, thinking about the presentation, I would have loved to see something in your presentation that spoke a little bit to Tesla. I mean, because I think you were talking about transforming the culture of Tesla as a whole, but you chose to focus on the auto portion. Whereas, I mean, if you're looking at helping to transform the overall culture of Tesla, thinking about, you know, how you're balancing out the perceptions of, well, you know, Tesla is making a big environmental impact with regard to electric vehicle, electricity and the use of electricity for infrastructure in general. So that could be an interesting way to think about, or interesting point to try to incorporate into the presentation. The other thing I think Tim's point about the Challenger example, I thought that it was a very dramatic way to start the presentation, but it was also very sobering, and getting to my earlier point of creating this feel of win-win and being excited to be presenting to board and to share the excitement of making Tesla better. It was kind of like it was definitely a sort of a sobering moment where I think as a board, you're all of a sudden focused on, oh no, this is a potentially a big area of risk for us, as opposed to a big area of opportunity. So that sometimes can be just thinking about how the timing of when some of those things are presented, and talking more about the opportunities maybe first. I mean, it's still no question, I think you did a great job of talking about the risks and the examples that you gave with all of the companies in a very, very practical way, talking about those risks. That was very, very useful. But just the way that it's timed to sort of, like it's storytelling, like how you're getting people excited about it, and carrying that forward, maybe, starting with a cautionary tale sometimes works well, but it can also backfire.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Please go ahead, Cheyenne.
No, I was just when you mentioned about technology, we did discuss about Elon Musk favoring camera over LiDAR and radar, and we realized that we could argue that you need a combination of technologies to actually make an autopilot really succeed. But as you mentioned, we are talking to a board of directors who know their technologies, so we didn't want to rub off on that, rub them in the wrong way. So we focused more on the financial implications if we went down this road, and then the business cultural aspects of this.
Yeah. Yeah. And the changes I think that you recommended to the culture of innovation could have a lasting impact on all of the other work that Tesla is doing as well. So I think that was that's kind of the value add. You're saying, okay, great. We're making a set of recommendations that are going to help you not only, fix the something that we saw with regard to this automotive portion, but the trickle, sort of the furthering effects to the other areas that Tesla is working on, whether it's, commercial transport, with regard to the innovation that they're doing with regard to solar energy, or enabling people to as Elon Musk said, enable you to make money with your car even when you're not using it. So I mean, that's something else that's on their roadmap for, okay, great, I'm not using this is a huge public sort of general transportation issue that a lot of people are trying to solve. Most of our vehicles spend their time sitting in one place being unused. That not only takes up space, but again, it's a resource that people aren't using. So being able to get those vehicles in use and share those costs, as a potential to really transform parts of our society. I mean, how many parking garages and how there's all kinds of implications of that. So anyway, I think there's a very exciting presentation. I think a really relevant topic. As a technologist, I'm also fascinated by this topic. So I appreciate all the thought that you put into it.
Yeah, and Peter brings up a great point. It's extraordinary how the auto industry, you can imagine Elon Musk saying, "Oh, only 15 deaths in 3 years. Like, that's a win." But you guys put up a slide with Mr. Wong's family members sitting in a lawyer's boardroom. That is compelling. And the last company I was an ethics officer for is Pratt & Whitney, which was a division of Raytheon Technologies, and we make jet engines. And believe me, every single thing about what we do is 0 fatalities. So, to imagine a car company leader saying, "Oh, only 15 deaths, yay," or something, whereas, of course, for Pratt & Whitney, every single day, I mean, it's 0. Let's get 0. And if you ever look at a list of the deaths associated with plane travel starting back in the 1950s until today, you'll be so impressed with what happens when corporations have as an aspiration to bring the number of deaths down to 0. So, because it's possible, and I think you all know, Greg and Peter and I are older, but during your lifetime, how many fewer accidents will exist because of this technology and the way that you can program the cars to not even, from a physics standpoint, be able to hit each other anymore, and all of the good that will come out of that, and the reality that companies like State Farm and Allstate and Geico are going to either cease to exist, or they will be in such completely different markets 20 years from now that we won't even remember that they used to be an automobile insurance company. So
I think
cool.
Your point on the Pratt & Whitney example is really good, and it reminded me of an article I read about Alcoa, and the CEO basically took it as his mandate: I will reduce injuries to 0. My goal is to reduce employee injuries to 0. And the company took off like a rocket, because that one simple cultural change just cascaded through the entire organization. Everybody bought in, everybody was on the same page, and success was easy to come by then.
And you five understand there are legal implications to a CEO saying that, because if he says that or whatever, and then, there's any irresponsible behavior, they're like, okay, you're an SEC company and you announced a strategic initiative, blah, blah, blah. So, well, listen, you guys deserve a break. This is awesome. Good luck tomorrow with who does the 10 minutes and then the 90 seconds. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them through whatever way you've been asked to do it, whether it's Tom directly. Let me mention to my two judges, I don't know what the deadline is, but Tom's looking forward to you filling out your judge's form. So it's I don't think it's due today or something like that, but just make sure you fill out your judge's form and supply that in time so that we can give this team an opportunity to win first place. Any final questions before I abandon you?
I just want to say thanks to everybody, especially Michael. So we've done a bunch of these, and this is by far the smoothest running competition that we've done. So hats off to the whole team over there.
I totally agree. Michael's our number one tech guy. He's also been around since the beginning. And thank you for acknowledging that. It should not go underappreciated. So listen, have a great rest of your day, a great weekend. Good luck this tomorrow, but as well Monday when all the announcements. And please, even if you're graduating, please encourage your university to send another team next year so we can maybe meet you face-to-face in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Take care.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks for your
Everybody.
time. Bye.
Guys.
Bye.